Subscribe for untold royal moments that history never explains. The morning started like any other Tuesday at Buckingham Palace. Staff members hurried through the corridors with silver trays, polishing cloths tucked into their uniforms. The sound of footsteps echoed against marble floors as maids prepared rooms for the day ahead. Outside, tourists gathered near the gates, cameras ready, hoping to catch a glimpse of royalty. Nobody knew that within hours everything would change. Camilla sat in her private sitting room, sipping tea from a delicate porcelain cup. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, casting golden patterns across Persian rugs. She wore a cream-colored dress with pearl earrings, her hair styled perfectly as always. A small stack of letters waited on the mahogany desk beside her, correspondence that needed attention. She picked up the first envelope, running her finger along the edge. Down the hallway. Palace advisors gathered in a wood-paneled meeting room. Their faces looked serious, troubled even. Papers were spread across a long table, documents marked with red seals. One advisor, a man named Geoffrey with silver hair and wire-rimmed glasses, kept glancing at his watch. Another woman, Margaret, tapped her pen against a leather notebook. The tension in the room could be felt like a physical weight. "We cannot delay this any longer," Geoffrey said quietly. His voice trembled slightly. "The evidence is overwhelming." Margaret nodded, though her expression showed clear reluctance. "The king must be informed immediately. This will shake the entire institution." A younger advisor named Thomas stood near the window, looking out at the palace grounds. "Are we absolutely certain? Once we take action, there is no going back. The public reaction will be massive." Geoffrey gathered the papers into a folder, his hands steady, despite the gravity of the situation. "We have verified everything 3 times. Bank statements, recorded conversations, witness testimonies. It all points in the same direction." The door opened, and a senior palace official entered. His face was pale, drawn. "His Majesty is ready to see you now. He is in the study." The advisors exchanged glances. This was the moment they had been dreading. They filed out of the room, walking through corridors lined with portraits of past monarchs. Each painting seemed to watch them pass, as if judging their actions. The weight of history pressed down on their shoulders. Meanwhile, Camilla finished reading her letter. It was from a charity she supported, thanking her for a recent donation. She smiled softly, placing it aside. She had plans for the afternoon, a visit to a children's hospital followed by a dinner engagement. Her schedule was always full, packed with duties and appearances. Being a royal meant constant work, constant visibility. A knock came at her door. "Come in," she called out. Her private secretary entered. A woman named Elizabeth who had worked at the palace for 15 years. Elizabeth's usual warm smile was absent. She held a folded note in her hand. "Your Majesty, I have been asked to deliver this to you. It is from the king's office." Camilla took the note, noticing how Elizabeth's hand shook slightly. "Is everything all right, Elizabeth? I believe His Majesty wishes to speak with you. Immediately, if possible." Something in Elizabeth's tone made Camilla pause. She unfolded the note and read the brief message. Her face remained calm, controlled, but her eyes flickered with something, concern perhaps, or confusion. She set down her teacup carefully. "Tell them I will be there shortly." Elizabeth curtsied and left. Camilla stood, smoothing her dress. She walked to the mirror and checked her appearance, tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. Whatever this was about, she would face it with dignity. That was what royals did. They maintained composure no matter what storms raged around them. She made her way through the palace corridors. Servants bowed as she passed, but she barely noticed. Her mind raced through possibilities. Had something happened to one of the family members? Was there a security concern? The note had been cryptic, offering no explanation. The king's study was located in the oldest part of the palace. Heavy oak doors stood closed, guarded by 2 soldiers in ceremonial uniforms. They opened the doors as she approached, faces expressionless. Inside, the study was dimly lit despite the sunny day outside. Dark curtains were partially drawn. The king sat behind his desk, and standing around the room were Geoffrey, Margaret, Thomas, and several other officials she recognized. "You asked to see me," Camilla said, her voice steady. The king looked up. His expression was unlike anything she had seen before. Not anger exactly, but something deeper. Disappointment mixed with sadness and determination. He gestured to a chair across from his desk. "Please sit down." She sat, folding her hands in her lap. The officials remained standing, creating a semicircle around the room. The atmosphere felt suffocating. "I will not waste time with pleasantries," the king began. His voice was formal, distant. "We have uncovered information that requires immediate action. Information that involves you directly." Camilla's expression did not change, but her fingers tightened slightly. "What information?" Jeffrey stepped forward, opening the folder he carried. "Over the past 6 months, palace investigators have been looking into certain financial irregularities. Funds that were supposed to go to charitable organizations. Funds that were instead diverted." "Diverted," Camilla repeated. "I do not understand." Margaret spoke next. "Bank accounts were established under false names. Money was transferred through shell companies. The trail is complex, but it all leads back to accounts that you have access to." Camilla's face flushed slightly. "This is absurd. I have never stolen money. Every penny I handle goes through proper channels. There are records, accountants, oversight." Thomas produced a stack of papers. "These are copies of bank statements. Transactions totaling nearly £2 million over the course of 18 months. The signatures on the authorization forms match your handwriting." The room fell silent. Camilla stared at the papers, but did not reach for them. Her mind worked quickly, trying to process what was happening. This could not be real. It had to be some terrible mistake, or worse, a setup. "I want to see those documents," she said firmly. The king nodded to Jeffrey, who brought the papers to her. She took them, her hands now visibly shaking. She read through the pages, her eyes scanning account numbers, dates, amounts. Some of the signatures did look similar to hers, but something felt wrong. "These are forgeries," she said. "Someone has framed me. I never signed these documents. I never authorized any transfers." "We considered that possibility," the king said. "Handwriting experts have examined the signatures. They believe they are genuine." Camilla stood abruptly. "Then your experts are wrong. I am being set up. Someone within this palace is trying to destroy me." Jeffrey's expression remained neutral. "There is also testimony. Staff members who witnessed conversations. Phone records showing calls to the banks in question. The evidence is substantial." "What staff members?" "Let me face my accusers." Margaret shook her head. "They have been granted anonymity for their protection, but their statements are detailed and consistent." Camilla looked from face to face, seeing no sympathy, no doubt. They had already decided. This meeting was not about investigating the truth. It was about delivering a verdict. "You cannot do this," she said, her voice rising slightly. "I have devoted myself to this family, to this institution. I have worked tirelessly, sacrificed my privacy, my freedom, and now you accuse me of being a thief based on forged documents and anonymous witnesses." The king stood as well. "I wish there was another explanation. Truly I do, but we cannot ignore evidence of this magnitude. The integrity of the crown is at stake. So you will throw me away? Just like that? You will be given the opportunity to defend yourself, but effective immediately, your royal duties are suspended. You will be confined to your private quarters while a full investigation is conducted. Security will ensure you do not leave the palace grounds." The words hit like physical blows. Confined, suspended. It was happening so fast, too fast. Camilla's composure finally cracked. Tears welled in her eyes, though she fought to hold them back. "Please," she whispered. "You have to believe me. I am innocent." The king's expression softened for just a moment, a flicker of the man she thought she knew. But then it hardened again. "I hope that is true. But until we know for certain, this is how it must be." A knock came at the door. 2 palace security officers entered, both large men in dark suits. They did not look at Camilla directly, keeping their eyes fixed on a point above her head. "These officers will escort you to your quarters," the king said. Camilla looked at the security men, then back at the king. The reality of the situation crashed over her. She was not just being accused. She was being arrested, in all but name. A prisoner in the very palace she had called home. "This is wrong," she said one last time. "History will show that this is wrong." Nobody responded. The security officers moved to either side of her, not touching her, but making their presence clear. She had no choice. With her head held high, Camilla walked toward the door. Each step felt like walking through deep water, slow and heavy. As she left the study, palace staff in the corridors quickly looked away. News traveled fast within these walls. Already they knew something had happened. The queen consort being escorted by security officers was not a normal sight. Whispers would begin within minutes. The walk to her private quarters felt endless. The beautiful paintings, the ornate decorations, the symbols of power and prestige, all of it now felt like a cage. The security officers remained silent, their footsteps echoing in rhythm with hers. They reached her rooms. One officer opened the door while the other waited. Camilla entered, hearing the door close behind her with a final, terrible click. She stood in the center of the room, surrounded by her possessions, her life now feeling like a stranger in her own space. Outside, the palace continued its daily routine. Tourists took photographs. Guards changed shifts. Maids cleaned rooms. But inside, in the private quarters of the queen consort, a woman sat on the edge of her bed and finally allowed herself to cry. The tears came hot and fast. Tears of shock, fear, and betrayal. She did not know who had done this to her or why. But she knew one thing with absolute certainty. Someone powerful wanted her destroyed. And they had just succeeded in the first phase of their plan. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through Camilla's windows. She had stopped crying hours ago, though her eyes remained red and swollen. She sat at a writing desk, staring at a blank piece of paper. She wanted to write something, anything, to make sense of what was happening, but words failed her. How could she defend herself against invisible enemies? A soft knock interrupted her thoughts. The door opened to reveal Elizabeth, her private secretary. The woman's eyes were sympathetic but cautious. She carried a tray with tea and sandwiches. "I thought you might need something to eat," Elizabeth said quietly. Camilla managed a weak smile. "Thank you, Elizabeth. You are kind to think of me." Elizabeth set the tray down, then hesitated. She glanced toward the door, checking if anyone was listening. When she spoke again, her voice was barely above a whisper. "Your Majesty, there are rumors spreading through the staff quarters. People are saying terrible things." "What sort of things?" "That you have been stealing from charities for years. That you used the money for gambling debts. That you were planning to flee the country." Elizabeth's voice cracked. "I do not believe any of it. I have worked with you too long to believe such lies." Camilla reached out and squeezed Elizabeth's hand. "Thank you. That means more than you know. But tell me, who is spreading these rumors? Where did they start?" Elizabeth shook her head. "I do not know. By the time I heard them, they were already everywhere. Kitchen staff, gardeners, even some of the senior household members. Everyone is talking." "This is part of it," Camilla said, more to herself than to Elizabeth. "Destroy my reputation first. Make everyone believe I am guilty before any investigation even begins. What will you do? I need to find out who is behind this. Someone orchestrated this entire situation. The forged signatures, the false witnesses, the convenient timing. This level of planning requires resources and inside knowledge." Elizabeth glanced at the door again. "I should not be telling you this, but there is something else. I overheard Geoffrey speaking with Margaret earlier. They mentioned that the investigation will conclude within 3 days. 3 days, Your Majesty. That is barely enough time to examine anything properly." Camilla felt cold dread settle in her stomach. They have already decided the outcome. This is not an investigation. It is a performance. But why? Who benefits from removing you? That was the question that had been haunting Camilla since she was escorted from the king's study. Who stood to gain from her downfall? Several possibilities existed. Other family members who resented her position, political figures who opposed the monarchy, even foreign interests who wanted to destabilize the crown. The list was long and troubling. "I need to speak with someone who can help me," Camilla said. "Someone outside the palace who cannot be influenced or threatened. Do you know anyone?" Elizabeth thought for a moment. "There is a journalist named Sarah Mitchell. She used to cover royal affairs but left that beat 2 years ago. She has a reputation for integrity, for digging into corruption even when it is dangerous. I have her contact information. Can you reach her without anyone knowing?" "I will try. But you must understand, Your Majesty, if I am caught helping you, I will lose my position. Possibly worse." Camilla looked at the woman who had served her faithfully for years. She could not ask this of her, could not put her at risk. But Elizabeth seemed to read her thoughts. "I am going to help you whether you ask or not," Elizabeth said firmly, "because it is the right thing to do. I will contact Sarah Mitchell tonight." After Elizabeth left, Camilla forced herself to eat some of the sandwiches. She needed to keep her strength up. Whatever was coming, she would need every bit of energy and clarity she could muster. As evening approached, she heard voices outside her door. The security officers were changing shifts. She recognized one voice, a man named David, who had been with palace security for over a decade. She had always been kind to him, remembering his name, asking about his family. Perhaps that kindness might now prove valuable. She opened her door slightly. David stood in the corridor with another officer she did not recognize. "David," she called softly, "may I have a word?" He looked uncomfortable, but approached. The other officer watched with suspicion. "Your Majesty, I am not supposed to engage in conversation with you. I understand. But I need to ask you something. You have served this palace honorably for many years. You have seen how I conduct myself. Do you truly believe I am capable of what they are accusing me of?" David's face showed internal conflict. He glanced at his partner, then back at Camilla. When he spoke, his voice was low. "I have my doubts, Your Majesty. The orders we received were unusual, very specific, almost as if someone knew exactly what was going to happen before it did." "What do you mean?" "We were briefed yesterday morning, told to prepare for a high-priority containment situation. But the accusations against you were not officially made until this morning. Someone knew this was coming." This confirmed Camilla's suspicions. The entire scenario had been planned in advance. But by whom? "David, if you remember anything else, anything that might help me understand what is happening, I would be grateful if you could find a way to let me know." He nodded slightly, then stepped back as his partner cleared his throat in warning. The conversation was over, but Camilla had learned something important. The conspiracy went deeper than she had initially thought. Night fell over the palace. Camilla lay in bed, but could not sleep. Her mind replayed every interaction from the past few months, searching for clues. Had someone said something suspicious? Had there been warning signs she missed? She thought about the various palace officials. Trying to determine who might have the motive and means to orchestrate such a complex scheme, Geoffrey came to mind. He had been the one presenting the evidence, speaking with the most authority, but he had worked at the palace for 30 years. What reason would he have to target her? Unless someone was controlling him, threatening him, or paying him. Then there was Margaret. She had seemed reluctant during the meeting, but that could have been an act. Margaret had connections throughout London's social elite. She would know how to manipulate financial records, how to create convincing forgeries, or perhaps it was someone she had not even considered yet. Someone working quietly in the background, pulling strings without ever appearing suspicious. A sound caught her attention. Soft footsteps in the corridor, moving quickly. Then a piece of paper slid under her door. Camilla got out of bed and picked it up. The note was written in Elizabeth's handwriting. "Sarah Mitchell will meet you tomorrow. Location and time to follow. Destroy this note." Camilla tore the paper into tiny pieces and flushed them down the toilet. Hope flickered in her chest. If she could get her story to a trustworthy journalist, perhaps the truth could still come out. The public had a right to know that something corrupt was happening within the palace walls. The next morning brought an unexpected visitor. The king himself appeared at her door, accompanied by Jeffrey. Camilla stood as they entered, maintaining her dignity despite her fear. "Wanted to see how you are managing," the king said. His tone was formal but not entirely cold. "As well as can be expected when one is imprisoned in their own home," Camilla replied. Jeffrey stepped forward with yet another folder. "We have continued examining the evidence. There are additional transactions that have come to light. The total amount now exceeds £3 million. Camilla felt fury rising in her chest. "Of course there are. You will keep finding more evidence because someone is manufacturing it. How convenient that new discoveries keep appearing just as you need them." "These accusations do not help your case," Jeffrey said stiffly.
Ow.
"I am not interested in helping my case with you. You have already decided I am guilty. What I want to know is who is feeding you this false information? Who stands behind you, telling you what to say and what to find?" Jeffrey's face reddened. "I resent the implication that I am being manipulated. I am conducting a thorough and unbiased investigation. In 3 days. Elizabeth told me you plan to conclude everything in 3 days. What kind of thorough investigation can possibly be completed in that time?" The king raised his hand. "Enough. This arguing serves no purpose. Jeffrey, please wait outside." After Jeffrey left, the king studied Camilla carefully. "You truly believe you are innocent?" "I am innocent. And I believe you know that, deep down. This does not feel right to you either, does it?" He sighed heavily, suddenly looking much older. "I do not know what to believe. The evidence appears solid, but there are aspects that trouble me. The speed at which everything is moving. The certainty with which my advisors present their findings. It does feel orchestrated. And stop this. Order a real investigation, one that takes the time necessary to uncover the truth. I wish I could. But there are forces at play here that even I cannot fully control. The government is involved now. The Prime Minister has been briefed. If I appear to show you favoritism, it will create a constitutional crisis." Camilla understood then. This was bigger than just palace intrigue. Political powers had become involved, which meant the stakes were enormous. Someone wanted her removed, not just from the palace, but from public life entirely. The question remained why. "Who benefits from destroying me?" she asked the king directly. He did not answer immediately. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely audible. "There are those who never wanted our marriage. Who saw you as an obstacle to their plans for the monarchy. They have been patient, waiting for the right moment to strike. And now they have manufactured that moment." He nodded slowly. "I will do what I can to slow this process down, to give you more time. But you must understand, I am limited in what I can do without endangering the entire institution." After he left, Camilla felt a strange mixture of validation and despair. At least the king had some doubts. But those doubts would not be enough to save her if powerful forces truly wanted her gone. That afternoon, Elizabeth returned with another note. The meeting with Sarah Mitchell was arranged for that evening. There was a private garden on the palace grounds, rarely used and far from the main buildings. Elizabeth had found a way to distract the security cameras for exactly 10 minutes. It would have to be enough. As darkness fell, Camilla prepared herself. She dressed in dark clothing and waited by her window, watching for Elizabeth's signal. When a light flashed 3 times from across the courtyard, she knew it was time. She slipped out of her room, moving as quietly as possible through the corridors. Her heart pounded so loudly she was certain someone would hear it. Every shadow seemed threatening, every sound suspicious. But she reached the garden entrance without being discovered. Sarah Mitchell was already there, a woman in her 40s with intelligent eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She held a small recording device. "We do not have much time," Sarah said immediately. "Tell me everything." Camilla spoke rapidly, knowing their time was limited. She told Sarah about the accusations, the forged signatures, the anonymous witnesses. She explained how the investigation seemed predetermined, how evidence kept appearing exactly when needed. Sarah listened intently, occasionally asking sharp questions that showed her journalist's instinct for finding the truth. "Who do you think is behind this?" Sarah asked. "I have suspicions, but no proof. Jeffrey and Margaret are presenting the evidence, but I believe they are taking orders from someone higher up. Someone with enough power to orchestrate something this complex. Sarah checked her watch. We have 4 minutes left. I need you to understand something. If I publish this story, it will create chaos. The palace will deny everything. You will be painted as a desperate woman making wild accusations. Are you prepared for that? I am already being painted as a thief and a criminal. At least your story will give people the truth. Let them decide what to believe. There is someone I need to contact, Sarah said. A forensic accountant who specializes in tracing fraudulent transactions. If your signatures were forged, he can prove it. But he will need access to the original documents, not just copies. How can we get those? They are locked in the palace archives. Sarah smiled grimly. Leave that to me. I have sources everywhere, including inside these walls. Give me 2 days. They heard footsteps approaching. Their time was up. Sarah quickly pocketed her recording device and slipped away into the shadows. Camilla hurried back toward her quarters, her pulse racing. She made it back just as the security cameras resumed their normal operation. Elizabeth's timing had been perfect. The next morning brought unexpected news. One of the anonymous witnesses had come forward publicly. A woman named Patricia, who worked in the palace accounting office, gave an interview to a tabloid newspaper. She claimed she had seen Camilla signing documents that authorized suspicious transfers. She described specific dates, times, and locations. Camilla read the newspaper article with growing horror. Patricia's testimony was detailed and convincing. She mentioned things that only someone with genuine inside knowledge would know. But Camilla had never met this woman. She recognized the name from palace rosters, but they had never interacted directly. How could Patricia claim to have witnessed events that never happened? Elizabeth brought lunch and more disturbing news. Patricia has been promoted. She received a substantial raise and was moved to a better office. The announcement came this morning, a reward for lying, Camilla said bitterly. They paid her to testify against me. There is more. 2 other staff members have also come forward, both with similar stories, both claiming to have seen you engaged in suspicious activities. The walls were closing in. Public opinion would turn against her completely now. 3 witnesses, all palace employees, all telling the same story. It did not matter that the story was false. Repetition created truth in the public's mind. Camilla spent the afternoon pacing her room, feeling trapped and helpless. She thought about her life before the palace, before the constant scrutiny and pressure. She had been happy once, living a quieter existence. Now, she was fighting for her freedom, her reputation, her very identity. That evening, Elizabeth smuggled in a burner phone. Sarah Mitchell sent this. She will call you at exactly midnight. Camilla waited anxiously, watching the minutes tick by. When the phone finally rang, she answered immediately. I have news, Sarah said without preamble. My forensic accountant examined the bank transactions. He found something interesting. All of the suspicious transfers were initiated from the same IP address, an address that traces back to a computer in Jeffrey's office. Camilla's breath caught. Jeffrey is behind this. Not necessarily. Anyone with access to his office could have used that computer, but it narrows down the possibilities. There are only about 6 people with regular access to that space. Who are they? Sarah listed the names. Jeffrey himself, Margaret, 2 administrative assistants, and 2 members of the palace technology department who maintained the computer systems. I need more time to investigate each of these individuals, Sarah continued. But there is something else. I spoke with a retired palace official who left under mysterious circumstances 3 years ago. He told me there has been a power struggle going on behind the scenes. A group of traditionalists who want to return the monarchy to older, more conservative practices. They see you as representing unwanted change. So this is political? Everything in the palace is political. But yes, I believe this is about more than just you. Someone wants to send a message about what happens to those who do not conform to their vision. After the call ended, Camilla felt both encouraged and frightened. At least they were making progress, uncovering pieces of the conspiracy. But time was running out. The 3-day investigation period was nearly over. Soon, final judgments would be made. She did not sleep that night. Instead, she sat by the window, watching the palace grounds bathed in moonlight. Somewhere out there, her enemies were probably celebrating. They thought they had won. But Camilla was not ready to surrender yet. The next morning, she received a formal summons. She was to appear before a panel at 2 o'clock that afternoon. The investigation results would be presented, and she would be given a chance to respond. It was her last opportunity to defend herself. Elizabeth helped her dress in a navy suit, elegant but serious. "Whatever happens today, hold your head high," Elizabeth said. "You are not a criminal. Do not let them make you feel like one." The security officers arrived promptly at 1:30. They escorted her through the palace corridors once again. Staff members who saw her looked away quickly, uncomfortable. The rumors had done their work. She was already convicted in their eyes. The panel convened in a grand conference room. The king sat at the center of a long table, flanked by Geoffrey, Margaret, Thomas, and 4 other senior officials. A court stenographer sat in the corner, fingers poised over a keyboard. This was being officially recorded. Geoffrey stood and began reading from a prepared statement. "After thorough investigation, we have conclusively determined that Queen Consort Camilla did knowingly and deliberately divert funds intended for charitable purposes. The evidence includes authenticated signatures, witness testimony, and forensic accounting that traces the stolen money through multiple accounts." He presented chart after chart, document after document. To anyone unfamiliar with the details, it looked damning. The case seemed airtight. When he finished, the king turned to Camilla. "You may now present your defense." Camilla stood, her legs steady despite her fear. "Everything you have just heard is a fabrication. The signatures are forgeries. The witnesses are lying. The accounting trail was manufactured. I am being framed by individuals within this palace who want me removed." "That is a serious accusation," Geoffrey said. "Do you have any proof?" "I have proof that all of the suspicious transactions originated from a computer in your office, Geoffrey, which means either you are the one who initiated them, or you allowed someone else to use your computer for this purpose." Geoffrey's face went pale. "That is absurd. You are making desperate allegations without evidence." "I have an independent forensic accountant who traced the IP address. Would you like me to present his findings?" A murmur went through the panel. The king raised his hand for silence. "You have hired an outside investigator?" "I had no choice. The investigation being conducted here is biased and predetermined. I needed someone who could examine the evidence objectively." Margaret spoke up, her voice sharp. "Bringing in outside parties violates palace protocols. Any information you obtain through unauthorized channels is inadmissible." "Inadmissible in what?" "This is not a court of law. This is a kangaroo court designed to rubber stamp a decision you have already made." The room erupted in shocked exclamations. The king pounded his fist on the table. "That is enough. We will maintain proper decorum." But Camilla was not finished. "I demand to face my accusers. Patricia and the other witnesses should be required to testify in front of me. Let me question them about their claims. If they are telling the truth, they should have no trouble answering my questions." Geoffrey shook his head. "The witnesses have been guaranteed anonymity for their protection. We cannot expose them to potential intimidation." "Intimidation? I am the one who has been locked in my quarters under guard. I am the one whose reputation is being destroyed. Who exactly am I intimidating?" Thomas, the younger advisor, spoke for the first time. "Perhaps we should consider bringing the witnesses in. If the queen consort is innocent, direct questioning might reveal inconsistencies in their stories." Margaret glared at him. "That is highly irregular." "So is rushing through an investigation this important in 3 days," Thomas countered. The king looked troubled. He seemed torn between following protocol and seeking actual truth. "I will take your suggestion under advisement. But first I want to hear more about this forensic accountant." Camilla explained how Sarah Mitchell had connected her with the expert, how he had traced the digital fingerprints of the fraudulent transactions. She saw several panel members exchanging glances. Her information was creating doubt, exactly what she needed. If you give me access to the original documents, not just copies, my accountant can prove the signatures are forgeries, Camilla said. He can show you the microscopic differences that indicate someone traced over my real signature to create false ones. Impossible, Jeffrey said quickly. Those documents are sealed evidence. They cannot be released. Why not? If you are so certain of your case, what harm could come from allowing independent verification? Before Jeffrey could respond, the king made a decision. I want those documents sent to 3 separate forensic experts. Not just the one you have hired, Camilla, but to others chosen by this panel. We will compare their findings. Your Majesty, I must protest, Margaret began. Your protest is noted, but I will not condemn someone based on evidence that has not been thoroughly verified. We will reconvene in 1 week. All 3 forensic reports will be completed by then. Jeffrey looked furious but said nothing. The panel was dismissed. As security officers prepared to escort Camilla back to her quarters, the king called her name. A moment, please. The others filed out, leaving them alone, except for one security guard stationed by the door. You have put me in a difficult position, the king said quietly. I am simply fighting for my innocence. I know, and part of me admires your courage. But there are consequences to what you have done today. By bringing in outside investigators and making accusations against palace officials, you have escalated this situation beyond anything we can easily control. What was I supposed to do? Accept my fate quietly? He sighed. Perhaps that would have been easier, but not honorable. Not just he paused. There is something I need to tell you. Something I learned just this morning. Patricia, the witness who gave the newspaper interview, has disappeared. Camilla felt ice in her veins. Disappeared. She did not report to work today. Her apartment is empty. It is as if she vanished overnight. They got rid of her. Whoever is behind this, they removed her before she could be questioned properly. That is my fear as well. Which means we are dealing with people who are willing to go to extreme lengths to see this through. He looked at her intently. You need to be very careful, Camilla. If they have made one person disappear, they can do it again. The warning hung in the air between them. This was no longer just about embezzlement and forgery. It had become something far more dangerous. That night, Camilla could not shake the feeling of being watched. The shadows in her room seemed darker, more threatening. She kept remembering the king's warning about Patricia's disappearance. If witnesses could vanish, what might happen to someone asking too many questions? Elizabeth arrived earlier than usual the next morning. Her face was drawn, worried. She set down the breakfast tray with trembling hands. What is wrong? Camilla asked. David, the security officer who spoke with you, he was removed from palace duty last night. They said he violated protocols by engaging in unauthorized conversation with you. He has been reassigned to a remote estate in Scotland, effective immediately. So they were eliminating anyone who showed sympathy toward her. The message was clear. Help Camilla, and you will pay the price. Elizabeth, you should stop coming here. It is too dangerous for you now. I'm not abandoning you, Elizabeth said firmly. Besides, Sarah Mitchell sent word. She has found something important. She needs to speak with you urgently. How can we arrange that? After yesterday's panel meeting, security will be even tighter. Elizabeth pulled out a small package from her pocket. Sarah had this delivered through a friend who works in the palace kitchens. It is a secure phone. She will call at noon. When the phone rang precisely at 12, Sarah's voice was tense with excitement. I found him. The person behind everything. It took days of digging, following money trails and interviewing sources, but I finally have concrete evidence. Who is it? Lord Ashford. He is a member of Parliament, extremely wealthy, and he has close ties to several palace officials, including Jeffrey and Margaret. More importantly, he has been funding a group called the Traditional Values Alliance. They oppose what they see as the modernization of the monarchy. Camilla knew the name. Lord Ashford had been vocal in his criticism of certain royal decisions, but she had never imagined he would go this far. Why target me specifically? You represent everything he hates. You came from outside the traditional aristocracy. You pushed for changes in how the palace interacts with the public. Most importantly, you have influence over the king. Ashford wants that influence removed so he can push his own agenda. What kind of agenda? He wants the monarchy to align more closely with conservative political causes. He sees the crown as a tool for maintaining traditional power structures. With you out of the way, he believes he can manipulate the king toward his goals. Do you have proof of his involvement? I have bank records showing payments to Patricia and the other witnesses. I have emails between Ashford and Jeffrey discussing strategy. I have testimony from a former member of the Traditional Values Alliance who left the group because he was uncomfortable with their methods. It is all circumstantial, but together it paints a clear picture. How do we use this information? I am publishing an article tomorrow. It will detail the entire conspiracy. But Camilla, you need to understand what will happen when this goes public. Ashford is powerful. He has allies in government, in media, throughout the establishment. He will fight back hard. I do not care. The truth needs to come out. There is one more thing. My source inside the palace told me that Jeffrey is planning to release a statement this afternoon. He is going to claim that your accusations about the IP address are false, that you manufactured that evidence yourself. He is trying to discredit you before the forensic reports come back. Camilla felt a surge of anger. They were not even waiting for proper investigation results. They were just making up new lies to counter her defense. Let him make his statement. When the forensic reports prove I am right, his credibility will be destroyed. After the call ended, Camilla began planning her next move. She could not simply wait passively for events to unfold. She needed to take action. She wrote a detailed letter explaining everything she knew about the conspiracy. She named Lord Ashford, described the money trails, outlined how the evidence had been manufactured. She made 3 copies and gave them to Elizabeth. 1 copy goes to Sarah Mitchell. 1 goes to the king's private secretary, bypassing Jeffrey entirely. And 1 goes to the Prime Minister's office. If something happens to me, these letters need to reach their destinations. Elizabeth looked frightened, but determined. I will make sure they are delivered. That afternoon, just as Sarah had predicted, Jeffrey held a press conference. Standing before cameras and journalists, he announced that Camilla had attempted to manipulate evidence. He claimed the IP address information was fabricated, that she had hired unethical investigators to create false trails. The Queen Consort is desperate, Jeffrey said gravely. She is willing to lie and deceive to avoid facing the consequences of her actions. But the truth cannot be hidden. Justice will prevail. Watching the press conference on television, Camilla felt her reputation being torn apart in real time. Social media exploded with commentary. People who had been undecided now turned against her. The narrative was set. She was not just a thief, but a liar who tried to frame innocent people. But Camilla noticed something interesting. The king was not present at the press conference. In matters as serious, he would normally appear alongside his advisors. His absence suggested he was distancing himself from Jeffrey's statements. 2 days later, the first forensic report arrived. The expert, chosen by the panel, examined the signature documents carefully. His conclusion was stunning. The signatures were indeed forgeries. Someone had used a technique called tracing, with pressure variation, to create signatures that appeared authentic to casual inspection, but showed clear signs of fraud under microscopic analysis. The second report from Camilla's chosen expert confirmed these findings. But the third report, from an expert selected by Jeffrey, claimed the signatures were genuine. 2 against 1, but the doubt had been created. Another panel meeting was called. This time, the atmosphere was different. The officials seemed uncertain, less confident. The king looked troubled and tired. We have conflicting reports, he began. 2 experts claim forgery. 1 claims authenticity. This leaves us in a difficult position. Well, Thomas spoke up. Your Majesty, with respect, 2 out of 3 is not really conflicting. It is a majority opinion. If most experts agree the signatures are forged, we must take that seriously. Margaret tried to object, but the king silenced her with a look. There is also the matter of Patricia's disappearance, he continued. And I have received disturbing information about payments made to witnesses. Payments that originated from sources outside the palace. Jeffrey stood abruptly. Your Majesty, I must insist that we not allow conspiracy theories to derail this investigation. The evidence against Queen Consort Camilla is substantial. Is it Jeffrey, or is it manufactured? The king's voice was cold. I have spent the past week reviewing everything personally, and I have found numerous irregularities, questions that were never asked, evidence that was accepted without proper verification. I am beginning to think that the real investigation should be into how this investigation was conducted. Jeffrey's face turned red. I have served this institution for 30 years. My integrity is beyond question, and you will not mind answering some questions under oath. Along with Margaret and anyone else who had access to the documents and evidence in this case, the room fell silent. The power dynamic had shifted. Suddenly, those who had been prosecuting Camilla were the ones under scrutiny. That evening, everything accelerated. Sarah Mitchell's article, published online at 6 o'clock. The headline read, "Palace Conspiracy: How a Member of Parliament Plotted to Remove the Queen Consort." The article detailed Lord Ashford's involvement, the payments to witnesses, the connections between various officials. It named names and provided documentation. Within hours, it had been shared thousands of times across social media. At 8 o'clock, Lord Ashford released a statement denying everything. He called the article a vicious smear campaign. He threatened lawsuits, but his denials sounded hollow, especially when Sarah published the actual bank records showing payments to Patricia. At 10 o'clock, Patricia suddenly reappeared. She walked into a police station and gave a full confession. She admitted she had been paid to lie about Camilla. She said she had been hiding because she was afraid of what Ashford's people might do if she recanted her testimony. But seeing Sarah's article gave her courage to come forward. The two other witnesses quickly followed. Both admitted they had lied for money. Both implicated Lord Ashford and his organization. By midnight, everything was collapsing. Jeffrey was suspended pending investigation. Margaret resigned. Lord Ashford was questioned by police. The entire conspiracy was unraveling. The next morning, the king came to Camilla's quarters himself. He dismissed the security officers and entered alone. "I owe you an apology," he said quietly. "I should have trusted you from the beginning. I should have questioned the evidence more carefully. Instead, I allowed myself to be manipulated by people I thought were loyal advisors." Camilla felt tears welling up, but these were tears of relief, not despair. "You were in an impossible position. They made sure of that. Still, I failed you, and I will spend a long time making amends for that failure." He held out his hand. She took it, and he helped her to her feet. "You are free to go anywhere in the palace. All restrictions are lifted. Your position and duties are fully restored." They walked together through the corridors. Staff members who saw them stopped and stared. Some began to applaud. Word had spread about Patricia's confession, about the conspiracy being exposed. People realized they had witnessed an innocent woman being targeted by powerful forces. In the following days, more details emerged. Lord Ashford had been planning this for over a year. He had recruited Jeffrey and Margaret by promising them positions in his organization after they retired. He had paid investigators to create false documents. He had even bribed the forensic expert who claimed the signatures were genuine. The scandal dominated headlines for weeks. Parliamentary investigations were launched. Lord Ashford was arrested and charged with conspiracy to commit fraud. Jeffrey and Margaret faced criminal charges as well. But perhaps the most significant consequence was how the incident changed public perception of the monarchy. People realized that even those at the highest levels of society could be vulnerable to corruption and conspiracy. It humanized the royal family in ways that years of public relations campaigns never could. Camilla stood at the window of her sitting room 1 month later, looking out at the palace grounds. So much had changed, yet in some ways everything was the same. The gardens still bloomed. Guards still patrolled. Life continued. Elizabeth entered with tea. "There is a letter for you." From Patricia. Camilla opened it curiously. Patricia had written to apologize directly, explaining how she had been desperate for money to pay her mother's medical bills. Ashford had exploited that desperation. She was deeply ashamed of what she had done. "She is only human," Camilla said softly. We all make mistakes when we are afraid or desperate. Will you forgive her? I already have. Holding on to anger would only poison me, not her. That evening, Camilla and the king hosted a small dinner for those who had supported her during the crisis. Sarah Mitchell was there, as was Thomas, the advisor who had questioned the investigation. Elizabeth sat at the table as an honored guest. Even David, who had been brought back from Scotland, attended. As they ate and talked, Camilla reflected on everything she had learned. She had discovered that justice was fragile, that truth required constant defense, that power could corrupt even those who seemed honorable. But she had also learned about courage, about loyalty, about the importance of questioning authority when something felt wrong. The king stood and raised his glass. To Camilla, who reminded us all that integrity matters more than convenience, who stood firm when it would have been easier to surrender, who proved that truth, though it may be delayed, cannot ultimately be denied.
Oh.
Everyone drank to that. And as Camilla looked around the table at these people who had risked so much to help her, she felt something she had not felt in weeks: peace. The halls of the palace were no longer silent. They rang with conversation, with laughter, with life. The darkness had passed. And though the memory of those terrible days would never completely fade, they had been survived. Outside, the world went on. New scandals would emerge. New crises would develop. But in this moment, justice had prevailed. And that was enough. Full video on channel, and please subscribe to my channel for more royal stories. Thank you so much.